Welcome to On the Ground. Welcome to On the Ground with Joe Trippi, the new Lincoln Square podcast where we talk to the people who actually know what's happening on the ground in key battleground elections. This is our second episode on the ground in Texas. Our first episode with legendary Texas strategist Gilberto Ocaños is out now. He's a good friend. Definitely go check that one out, as well as our first series of episodes on the ground in Iowa, which National Democrats are still sort of sleeping on. Today, I'm joined by veteran newspaper reporter Carlos Sanchez. Carlos made a name for himself, covering the Cold War, crack epidemic, race riots of the early 90s, before settling down in Texas permanently. In Texas, Carlos worked for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Austin American-Statesman, and the Cox newspaper chain, before retiring from journalism to become Hidalgo County's Director of Public Affairs only a month before COVID hit. Carlos knows Texas. He knows chaos, which is why I'm so grateful that he's taking the time to join us today for On the Ground in Texas with Joe Trippi. Carlos, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Joe. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's kind of funny to see kind of Texas front and center being looked at as a possible swing state. I spent my entire professional career looking at Republicans dominate the political process here in Texas. And there seems to be some hope on the Democratic side for a variety of reasons.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because you're not, this isn't just Gilberto and I, we talked, we were pretty clear about it, trying to stay, on facts, but we're Democrats, so I wanted to get the take from somebody, from that journalistic view, sort of reporter's view of what's going on, because almost every cycle, I guess, since Beto, there's been the Democratic dream of maybe this time is the time. And I think there's even more dose of that this time around. Is it unrealistic in your view, or do you actually see things that might be, that you're seeing that make you think maybe something really is happening this time?
I think something definitely is happening, and whether it has an impact in terms of changing the color of Texas in any appreciable way, that might be the sub-story. The actual story is the fact that the rest of the country is now having to pay attention to a state that had been reliably red for the past 30 years, as I said. Stark statistic came out just yesterday. Abraham George, who's chairman of the Texas Republican Party, said that it had been reported to him by the National Republican Party that the expectation for this race, and these are all races in Texas, it's going to be upwards of $600 million in expenditures for both Republicans and Democrats. That's just an obscene amount of money in the wake of the most expensive primary in U.S. history at a little over $135 million for the Republican nomination. So I think that a lot of money that could have gone to some swing states, more reliable swing states, are being now diverted to Texas because Texas is such a prize, and symbolically and from the perspective of Congress as well.
And didn't they spend even a ton more in the runoff? Didn't both Cornyn and Paxton spend even more millions in the runoff that just passed last Tuesday?
They did. The last estimate was $135 million in the runoff.
And almost no one voted in there. I mean, in terms of the turnout, I know it's all this money, 130 million, and I remember I was looking at some county numbers where like literally 30 people were voting in a precinct or something. I mean, it just didn't show like that there was much energy. But what are you seeing?
The one thing that really stuck out at me, and you're right, the voter turnout for the Republican runoff was not very high, but the MAGA base was very consistent, and I found that fascinating. If you look at the primary, when Cornyn came in first, he came out with a little over 900,000 votes. Paxton came in second with 878,000 votes. If you fast forward to the runoff, Cornyn lost appreciably the number of votes. He dropped down to a little over 500,000 votes. However, Paxton went up by about 10,000 votes to 885,000 votes. So I think we've identified the MAGA base in Texas. And my question to you, Joe, is for strategic purposes, is that a floor or a ceiling in terms of what Talarico needs to do?
You know, it's interesting because part of me thinks, well, not necessarily that some of those Cornyn voters might vote for Talarico. I mean, it's possible, I guess. But more importantly, do they vote in the general? You know, do they, again, I mean, they weren't MAGA. I mean, I think the people who voted for Cornyn, I'd be like your take on that. I don't think they're the core MAGA voters, which means they didn't respond to Trump and Paxton in the way that MAGA voters do. And you know, with gas prices, with everything else, tariffs, and everything else that's happened that he's pushed. I'd like to get your take on what's happening in the Latino community too, because I mean, I'm not even talking about ICE and deportations and things like that so much as taking on the Pope and attacking the Pope, which is, you know, I mean, it just seems to me, you know, there's places in Iowa that are very Catholic. There's obvious Latinos that are very Catholic group for the most part. Some Protestants, obviously, but I'm just saying, what's happening that's churning this, and do you think those people will be as excited? I mean, they came out and voted for, as you said, Cornyn already had some drop off. So do they drop off even further now in a general election situation?
Well, it's interesting. I think Cornyn very identifiably is a Bush Republican. So what we're seeing here in terms of the runoff and Ken Paxton's very impressive victory is kind of a sea change. Is it a sea change in party loyalty? Is it a generational sea change? I think if you look at the Hispanic community, the generational sea change theory might hold up better. One of the ironies I thought, you know, just talking about all the money that's going to be necessary to pull off a victory here, is that Cornyn was among the top fundraisers in the Senate. So this is really an indicator about President Trump that he wants fealty more than he wants party victory. Because Cornyn could have played a very significant role in terms of raising money. Will he do that in the November election? I doubt it. I don't think he's obligated to. And it is a way of just showing Trump what he was capable of without out and out defying Trump. I think there's a lot of predictions being made that Republicans who have been primaried in other states and lost, Louisiana coming to mind immediately, are now free to kind of exercise their conscience in terms of dealing with Trump for the rest of this congressional session. I don't think Cornyn would defy Trump in that way. But there is a more subtle way of defying Trump, and that comes in fundraising. And that's where I think you'll see evidence of Cornyn defying Trump.
And of course, they've wasted no time. Paxton's wasted no time now in attacking Talarico every way he can. How do you see that side of things, Talarico's campaign and the way people are responding? Or do you think those attacks will land, or you know,
I think it's an interesting, again, sea change that we're seeing, and it might be people are just tired of these attacks. You see attacks on a daily basis. Anytime the media asked Trump any significantly difficult question, you can expect that reporter to be attacked. I think that people are tired of that attack strategy. And I think Talarico early on handled it masterfully. The story went that Paxton came out immediately calling Talarico a vegan, Talarico, and Talarico's response was, "I've been eating barbecue since before your first indictment." It kind of embraces the attack, but makes a far deeper point. And I think if Talarico keeps that up, people will be more receptive to that idea as opposed to simply calling Paxton a crook. The other component is the Talarico name that Republicans were using. Now Talarico is actually selling merch saying, "I'm Talarico." I think it's a brilliant move. And there was something that happened at the local level, the congressional race, that I thought was even more brilliant, and it happened early on. As soon as I live on the border in Texas, South Texas, which is an area that the Republicans really want to target. During the presidential election, 15 of the 17 South Texas counties flipped toward Trump, which was an extraordinary change. The wonderment right now is, are they going to stay loyal to Trump? So what happened after redistricting is, I live in the Texas Congressional 15th District, whose political lineage goes back to John Nance Garner. And anyway, the Republican, a woman named Monica de la Cruz, secured a victory and won election 2 cycles ago, won re-election 1 cycle ago, and is up for her 3rd term. The opponent, the Democratic opponent, has been literally a Grammy-winning singer for Tejano music. So his name recognition, Bobby Pulido, is very, very well known. And the day after he secured his victory in March, during the primary, she came out with a message on video that I think emanated from Washington. And it was basically saying, do you want a real representative, or do you want someone who sings at quinceañeras for your daughters? Quinceañeras are a huge cultural thing in South Texas. It's a sweet 16 blended with a wedding. The money that goes into that and the tradition and custom that go into that is fascinating. Well, in response to her criticism that Bobby Pulido only sings to quinceañeras, Bobby Pulido came out and said, yes, I'm honored to sing at quinceañeras because that represents our culture, that represents our family, that represents our community. And anybody who would like me to sing at their quinceañera, I would invite you to invite me to your quinceañera. In a matter of weeks, he got several thousand invitations, and he made his way through all these quinceañeras. Certainly, I'm thinking securing votes, securing support, as he stood next to the young girl turning 15. And I think that kind of smart response, a response that absorbs the Republican attack, is going to have an impact that in the past has not manifested itself in Texas.
Yeah, no, well, nationally, a lot of them just go unanswered. They attack, and it's, we roll our eyes. I mean, the Democrats roll their eyes. Oh, no one will buy that. And then sooner, after a couple of years, Barack Obama has to have his birth certificate and show it to everybody, and then they say it's a forgery because we didn't push back, immediately with a good, and like you said, go back with, with the indictment or something else that pokes in the opposite direction. What about the one thing that a lot of people talk about is how, the redistricting plan, when Trump called and said, I need 5 districts, and Abbott and the legislature doing it. But there's also been, at least when I look at it, it seems like they drew those lines on sort of performance from 2024, Latinos, independents, et cetera, that may or may not be real today. I mean, in other words, they may have made the districts may have felt they were drawing strong districts, but it's not clear whether that's indeed the case. Do you have some perspective on that, or what?
I absolutely do, because 3 of the 5 targeted districts are South Texas, Monica de la Cruz being one of them. Mm-hmm. There are 2 districts adjacent to Monica de la Cruz. The incumbents are both Democrats, Henry Cuellar, who's been there in Congress forever, and Vicente Gonzalez. And what we're seeing, I think, is the redistricting. They kind of lopped off the edges of Monica's district to give more Republicans to the adjacent 2 districts. What someone has pointed out is that as many as 60% of Monica's district is now new to her. So in many respects, she cannot run as an incumbent because they don't know her. So that in the end could hurt her. The other component of that is when you do something like that, it's with the hope that the challenger, in this case Bobby Pulido, has far less name recognition than the incumbent. But most people would argue that his name recognition throughout this South Texas area is much, much higher. Because he's spent the better part of 30 years performing. And that leads to kind of the final analysis with in particular this district. Someone compared Monica de la Cruz when she is talking in front of crowds, that she's AI generated because she is so stiff in terms of her ability to perform. And many of her talking points emanate from Washington. And I don't think that she's really comfortable with those talking points. By contrast, Bobby Pulido has been live on stage, his entire career. So he's very natural up on stage. And his message is very definitely local, which I think is a key to electoral victory.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I keep fighting against is everybody talking about some blue wave that's going to sweep the country. I mean, what I keep seeing is that people want change. I mean, particularly in places like Texas, where you've had one party sort of winning everything. It's places like that. Even in Florida, we're starting to see something there. We'll see whether anything happens there. But they're good candidates. And there's more energy for change, where independents are joining with Democrats and even some soft Republicans because they just think the one part that it hasn't been working. I don't know if that translates to the governor's race in Texas or not. I'm not saying winnable, but I'm saying, do you see it being more competitive this time around because of that? Because of how long Republicans have been in power and what they did with redistricting, or is that just hope and too much hopium, I guess?
I think the potential exists, and the problem. I looked this up just over the weekend. Right now, Governor Abbott has a war chest in excess of $100 million. His Democratic challenger, Gina Hinojosa, who's a state rep from Austin and very smart. I really like Gina. Her war chest is a little over $1 million.
Yeah.
So you look at the difference. She needs earned media much more than she can afford any type of paid media. And I think that the way to do that is, as you said earlier, just to call it like it is. There was a period of a couple of weeks right before the runoff, where several politicians in North Texas just out of nowhere announced that they are against Sharia law. And it was an incredible, because I follow news very closely in Texas, and I didn't see any kind of outbreak of Sharia law.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing, though, is a xenophobia that works well and plays well with the electorate. I think Gina really needs to call out that xenophobia that Abbott is so well entrenched in. I don't know if she should go so far as to call Abbott a racist, but if there is such a word, he's certainly a xenophobist. And she needs to call him out on that. And I think she's playing it far too cautiously. So I think there's a trouncing in the works there, given her caution and his war chest. I think, again, I'm using the local congressional race as an example of a race that really could turn the tide. And it could turn the tide because Bobby Pulido is being very honest. If you're addressing the immigration issue, he very candidly admits we on the border have always grown up knowing people who are here illegally. It's a part of our life. To see them suddenly picked up off the streets, to see our neighbors, to see our cousins, to see our teachers taken away by ICE has a really a dramatic impact on our lives. And we don't like that. And that's a message that's from the heart. It resonates at the local level. And he's thrown caution to the wind by candidly admitting that. And I think she, as a candidate, needs to do more of that.
And then, you mentioned the Sharia law thing. They're doing that everywhere now. I mean, particularly in any place in the South, they're pushing that the xenophobic stuff. So it's, but I agree with you. It's important for her and everybody to push back hard on it and call it out, because I think, particularly when you do take it to the other places, the other things they're talking about with people being picked up, that your neighbors. I mean, it all is connected, in terms of how they play on that. What are you? So, in terms of energy, are you feeling? I mean, we've talked about the lower. They spent a hell of a. Look, Abbott's got $100 million. They spent $132 million on the, in the Senate race, and look, the turnout was ho hum. If anything, actually, it was low. It seemed to me there was a lot of energy around Talarico and Crockett. I mean, I know it was a big fight, but a lot of Democrats turned out in Alabama, where I'm doing work for Doug Jones, who's running for governor of Alabama. Fascinating thing happened, Carlos, in the election. A couple Tuesdays ago, they had their primary there. Democratic turnout was up 116% from the last governor's primaries. And the Republican primary for governor was down 25%. So you had this Democratic energy through the roof, Republican energy like we saw in the runoff between Cornyn and Paxton. So do you feel that there at all, or is that still too early to tell what's going to happen?
That's the disconcerting part early on, because I think that the necessary turnout is going to be among the Hispanic voter, not just in South Texas, but statewide. Mm-hmm. A year ago, 2 years ago, the Hispanic demographic officially became the largest demographic in Texas. So it beat non-Hispanic whites by just a couple of percentage points. But my point is, I don't think that those South Texas counties that went for Trump are necessarily Republican leaning per se. I think they went for the candidate because the candidate ordered them. And I don't think they have any kind of allegiance to the Republican Party, and they will go for the candidate that courts them. And when you see Talarico in South Texas in particular, is with Bobby Pulido. And that's great because Bobby Pulido can raise enthusiasm at the local level in South Texas. But what about Houston? What about El Paso? What about San Antonio and Austin? I think that's where Gina Hinojosa could really play an important role in sort of drumming up Hispanic turnout, because if you can raise the turnout among Hispanics, particularly the way they did, as you pointed out, in Alabama, then there could be some real massive change in terms of the Republican control of Texas.
Yeah, Gilberto made exactly that point, that Houston, Dallas, places like that are going to be, that's where it's all going to come out in the wash in terms of what happens with turnout and whether the energy's there to win statewide. But I do think there's some synergy between governor's candidate, Talarico, and again, these 5 competitive House seats, even if some of them go Republican, there may be enough energy there to in different places from different candidates that lift everybody up. So we'll see.
Well, and I think part of the energy that needs to happen is a better reckoning between Talarico and the African American vote, because it got nasty for a while, and the Black vote is just as essential as the Hispanic vote if the Democrats intend on doing any kind of damage in the November election.
And Carlos, one last week, we're getting towards the end here, but I just wanted your take on what's driving all this. I mean, is it the war, high gas prices? Is it the tariffs? Is it, is it ICE? Is it, I mean, sort of like I said, I just feel sometimes like in Alabama, they've been one party rule for, decades. And there's also a feeling of corruption, that they're just self-dealing up there, in Austin. I don't know if that's so. Trying to get a feel for what are people talking about? What is making this? Is it the chaos? Is it just your take on what's driving it?
There was a poll that was released just last week by a group called Unidos US, which they're the successor to National Council de la Raza. So it's a legitimate organization, and it is the largest Hispanic poll that has ever been taken in the country. And these are of Hispanic voters, people who intend to vote. The 4 top issues are all pocketbook issues: inflation, jobs, healthcare, housing. Issue number 5, the first non-pocketbook issue, is immigration. So I think these, as with everybody else, the economy is driving it. The gas prices are driving it. The affordability at the grocery store is driving it. That is, I think, where some impact can be made in terms of a message resonating, particularly with the independents, who I don't think are real happy with their Republican choice in the Senate right now.
And that's true too. I think it's hard to see how any of that economic pressure turns more positive between now and November. I mean, in terms of even if you solve the Iran tomorrow, it's gas prices will still be high through there, and food prices are still going up. So I think if there's the environment is there for Democratic hopes to finally come true in a state where I know everybody's been yearning at. Now, people have been thinking.
Joe, there is one thing I feel compelled to say, and it's like, if you're a Democrat, you want the Democrats to really do well. Right. But I'm wondering if you need to temper that. You don't want them to do too well, only in the sense that 13 states so far have redistricted per Trump's mandate and the response to it. 2 of them favor Democrats. Texas led the charge in terms of redistricting, and it was out and out conveyed it's to give Republicans an advantage. If the Democrats do well and flip a bunch of Republican seats in Texas, as in the other states that have been redistricted, then you have a concern that came up in 2020. The nominee, Republican nominee for Attorney General, his name is Mays Middleton, is a huge 2020 election denier.
Yeah.
I can see where someone like him, who is likely to win, comes out and says, this election was fixed. This election was a fraud.
Yeah.
And that can happen in other states as well. I mean, it was a precedent set in 2020, and it's something that could go down to the state level this year.
Yeah, no, that's my big, actually, I'm not talking about Texas now, where the districts go, but it's clear to me that the more it looks like defeat is coming for the Republicans in 2026, the more they think that, the more Trump thinks that, the more the election denying, the hoax, the trying to mess with people at the polls, whatever. I mean, all the different tactics, that's the bigger fear, I think. You're right. That we agree on that, I think. Is there some place where people are more interested in things you've written or are writing? I don't know whether you're still occasionally posting things on the internet or on social media, but or someplace people, or something you would tell people if they want to follow somebody who's really covering Texas politics in a way that you think is just, above the board affair. Who would that be, or where could they go to get more info?
It's an interesting commentary, I think, on the state of the media itself. I would look on social media, X, Instagram, and Facebook, to look at some of the veteran political reporters, many of whom are retired now, but who are leaving commentary that is very insightful. I think just like South Texas, much of this state is becoming a news desert, and that benefits the party in power. And so to the extent that you can get insightful information right now, by and large, I'm seeing it coming from retired journalists. Okay.
Well, Carlos, thanks so much for being with us today, getting your insight. Is there anything you want to, any parting comments, or I just wanted to thank you so much for giving our listeners and viewers your expertise and insight into what's happening in Texas on the ground.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, and I think one of the things that's beneficial about this is ultimately it will generate, I think, a larger turnout in November, which is always helpful.
Great. Carlos Sanchez, thank you so much for being on the ground with Joe Trippi in Texas.
Thank you.